Picture this. You're driving around in your dream car, feeling the rush of wind in your ear, the power under your foot and the thrill of speed. Why do you want that car? What is it about that particular car or any of our desires that propels us towards it? Well, today we are diving into the deep, murky waters of desire. We are going to decode why we want what we want, and who knows, you might even question some of your desires by the end of it. We'll explore the stories of unrequited love, dive into Karl Marx's views on commodity fetishism, and even make connections to how our desires are like, and wait for it, tumors. Let's dive in, shall we? Prestige has an illusion. 1. The car you will never ride. When you desire a thing, you want the thing, the object. In other words, there is something intrinsic in that object that you want. There are 3 conditions that this ordinary desire satisfies. 1. A tangible material lacking. 2. An attraction towards an object to stifle the state of lack. And 3. A satisfying state. In other words, you want the object for what it is. However, the most problematic forms of our desire are not as such. They are what is called ontological or metaphysical desire. And I will explain. Suppose my friend owns a particular kind of car, the kind prominent people in town ride, and because I am most likely to be like my friend, I would desire such a car. And when the question kicks in, what is it about the car that I desire? Of course, I would tell myself all sorts of stories about the kind of engine these cars, the tires, the seatbelts, which might be partly true. However, lurking behind the shadows is a metaphysical desire. It is a desire without the object. Metaphysical desire flouts all the 3 conditions for ordinary desire. There is seldom any kind of real lacking. As such, an attraction to an object will not halt the state of lack. It is like wanting to put out a fire when there is none. As such, it makes sense that no satisfying state is reached. Again, notice that it is not having the object that gives the desire its powers. It is not the lack of an intrinsic quality of the object. It is something else. This point will take us to another layer of the discussion, where metaphysical desire is exposed for what it is. 2. It is true. Miss World isn't half as beautiful as we think she is. When someone or something is desired, the object's value is magnified as much as there is a resistance to obtaining it, and the greater this resistance, the greater the value. Suppose a dude went after a lady and wasn't successful. The dude might come back with the excuse that she was playing hard to get. This hard to get feature isn't unimportant, given that the value ascribed by the dude to the lady increases given the resistance. However, it is not unusual for disappointment to occur after the resistance is over, since the value ascribed that is imagined more often than not is not real. Then Kahneman's focusing illusion from social psychology is a valuable tool to think through this. It is even more sophisticated when multiple guys want to date, say, a one-time is odd. The more guys are interested, the more the resistance. As such, the value of our dear Miss Ward would be through the roof. And of course, this often leads to all sorts of drama. Let's take a look at the popular novel Von Goethe's The Sorrow of Young Werther, where Werther fell in love with Charlotte, who was already engaged to somebody else called Albert. The greater the resistance Werther faced trying to date Charlotte, the deeper Werther fell in love, which ultimately resulted in suicide. But before that, Charlotte and Werther had a conversation that is very telling, and it is worth quoting, at least in part. Charlotte, now telling Werther, be a man and conquer an unhappy attachment towards a creature who can do nothing but pity you. He bit his lips and looked at her with a gloomy countenance. She continued to hold his hand. Grant me but a moment's patience with her, she said. Do you not see that you are deceiving yourself, that you are seeking your own destruction? Why must you love me only, who belong to another? I much fear, that it is only the impossibility of possessing me which makes your desire for me so strong. In a charged exchange, Charlotte advises Werther to overcome his self-imposed limitations, embark on a journey, find a woman who can make him happy, and then return to enjoy a deeply satisfying friendship with her. He failed to go on the journey. All he did was commit suicide. 3. Karl Marx, 8 billionaires. Let's talk about Karl Marx's commodity fetishism, a critical part of his critique of political economy. It points out the quasi-supernatural quality of commodities that alienates the form of the commodity and the value relation of people involved in producing it. In other words, a commodity has a quality apart from the one the labor had imbued into it. This is simply a mismatch between the exchange value and the use value. This, Marx says, is as a result of capitalism, but it's deeper than that. It's the reality of human relations. It is driven by human mimesis. The more people, let's say high status model, want an object, the more the likelihood you will imitate that desire. If it is limited, the scarcity leads to resistance, and the folks who have it are imbued with this high status, as is the object. At some point, the focus on the object is lost, and what is left is a kind of prestige. As Anna Tobin put it, the components of human society are not the humans, but the relations existing between them. Much of our behavior is influenced by our desire for status. Consider when someone asks the question, what do you do or where do you work? Could it be that this query is less about genuine curiosity and more about gauging one's social standing? This fits into the intrinsic concepts of mimetic desire. Consequently, we persist with mimetic desire, continuing to mimic, and it's not uncommon to be consumed by status anxiety. That is the anxiety that arises from constantly comparing oneself to another. Let me also highlight another interesting point. A person born in the year 2000 has a higher probability, even though the probability is extremely low, of becoming somebody like Elon Musk, compared to the chance of a medieval peasant becoming a king in, say, 1243. The latter, that is, the medieval peasant, practically stands no chance. On top of that, we have social media, which often reminds us of what we are not. And suddenly, everyone is surprised that social media is making us anxious and depressed. In an increasingly egalitarian society, where we are told that we are equal, except that we cannot be equal in all possible ways, anxiety and depression shouldn't be surprising. 4. The fastest way to get cancer. Let's talk about tumors. Tumor is an abnormal growth of cells that is not necessary. It doesn't serve any purpose, it just grows. Now, there are benign tumors, which is, to put it bluntly, benign. It does not spread to other tissue, and it's usually not a problem, especially if it's on the vital organ. Conversely, there is what we call a malignant tumor. This is when the tumor cells go rogue and continue to spread like crazy to other parts of the body. Desire proper, that is metaphysical desire, can be likened to a tumor. It is unnecessary like a tumor is, only in the sense that it is metaphysical. The desire is benign when you are not breaking yourself, when you are not run over by desire, when you are not run over by envy. But it could be malignant if the subject isn't careful. This is when we talk about greed, violent envy to the point where harm is done to the other, deep-seated hatred, and the like. These are the words of human nature, and they can be traced directly to mimetic desires and metaphysical desires. As Girard puts it, desire is responsible for its own evolution. Desire is always using for its own ends the knowledge it has acquired of itself, and it's always becoming better equipped to reject everything that surrendered to its embrace. Unreined, metaphysical desire has a tendency to grow. The way cancer will grow, and will never be satisfied because there is nothing to satisfy. Just to clarify, the question isn't about whether we are resistant to metaphysical desire or not. In my opinion, no one is immune. Instead, the real question is, where is your desire channeled? As such, I must end on a quasi-normative note. To know the usefulness of a thing is to imagine an absence of that thing. So what would the world look like without something like metaphysical desire, you ask? It's a much trickier question that I thought, especially if I try to think about the details of such a world. All I can say is that progress might become utterly impossible, and we'll be living in a state of squalor. In conclusion, a fitting summary will be the following. In numerous discussions of this nature, the key takeaway is what helps you can also hurt you. An attraction towards a friend's possession might spur you to do a better job at moving civilization forward. but hopefully it won't transform you into a neurotically distressed individual. Or for example, a ruthless person who will not stop at anything to amass wealth or power, where anything truly means no boundary. Therefore, it is essential to know what kind of mountain you are climbing before you start.